Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to start here in just, probably a minute and a half, but I want to go ahead and start the broadcast and give you guys an opportunity to make sure that you're fully connected and say hello. I am going to shoot a chat to you all so that you can see where you would submit a question or a comment throughout the presentation today, and then I'll come back on here in just a minute and we'll rock and roll. Okay, I think we are close enough. So I just sent a chat just saying good afternoon. So feel free to respond to that and say hello. Tell us where you're from. As many of you know, my name is Kristen Galden and I am with Hand to Mind. And I am just going to be in the background today, facilitating and going over some of the logistics of the webinar. So first and foremost, you are coming in on mute. It will remain muted, each line. If you're having trouble hearing for some reason, be sure that you're connected to the audio. Because when you come in, it doesn't fully connect to the audio portion. So you can choose computer and that will just come through your computer speakers. But if it's not working, try the phone and give that a shot because it should connect. You don't have to put in the audio pin, just the access code after you dial will work. We will have a couple points throughout the presentation where Brittany asks you something. You can submit those answers in the question feature. So again, familiarize yourself with that. As you can see, the panel that you are seeing on your screen is on the screen here for us to walk through. The other thing I want to mention is that we will do a follow-up email that will include the recording and it will include a certificate. So it comes in one email, just, a thank you for attending kind of email that comes from me. That includes a link for you to view the recording and a certificate. The certificate is only going to be sent if you are attending the live webinar with us right now. If you are watching this recording at a later date, there is no certificate. And it's just a very general, date, time you attended a webinar with Hand to Mind. So give the system a few hours to send that. It won't be immediate, but you will receive that as a follow-up. So I am going to pass things off in just a moment, but before I do, I want to launch a couple polls and get a sense of where you all are in terms of your familiarity with hands-on standards and what kind of resources are appealing to you. So the first question is, and you should just be able to answer this in your panel, you should see it pop up. It is asking you, are you using hands-on standards? Are you familiar with hands-on standards but haven't used it? Have you used it in the past? Is it entirely new to you? And I'm gonna give just a minute for these to get a couple responses here. Ooh, okay, so it's looking like about 55% of the attendees have not heard of hands-on standards, so it is entirely new to them, so that will be helpful to you. And I have one more. I'm just listing out 4 different resources, and I want to know from your perspective, which of the following are you most likely to use? A daily problem-solving routine, hands-on mini lessons, learning at home family engagement, or hands-on intervention lessons. Which one of those is most appealing to you? And Brittany, while they are answering, I am going to go ahead and pass it off to you as the presenter. I should still be able to close the poll out even though I'm doing that.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
Yep.
And we are looking at 70% say hands-on mini lessons.
Oh, okay.
With problem solving coming in as a second close option, as well as intervention.
Hey, can you see my screen, Kristen? Just want to check.
I can. Yep.
Oh, okay, perfect. And it's the right screen. It's the one with the PowerPoint, correct?
Yes, it looks good.
Okay, awesome. Okay, well, Thank y'all very much for being here today with us. This is very exciting because it's our sneak peek to really an exciting new approach to hands-on math instruction. And I'm so excited to hear that, you know, we have over half of you who've never heard of hands-on standards. And if you have heard of hands-on standards, I think today you're going to see what is really new and fresh about this approach. So we're going to go ahead and get started by just telling you what the goal is for today. It's really to introduce you to our full solution to teaching math with a hands-on approach. If you've been in any of my sessions before, you know that you will have to do a little bit of math today. So I know you've probably worked really hard today and your brain may be tired. I can't imagine, especially if you are one of those virtual teachers right now or one of those face-to-face and virtual teachers. I'm sure you're very tired, but I really want to keep you engaged and I really want you to experience as much as we can this approach, okay? So our agenda is going to be, first, we're going to look real quickly at why hands-on learning. So we hear people tell us that we need to be hands-on, but really, what is that purpose? And then we're going to move into one of our new products, which is our daily problem solving. And we're going to look to see kind of what are the benefits of having a daily problem solving routine in your classroom that's very hands-on. And then we're going to move into looking at math mini lessons, as well as our math intervention, and see how does all this fit into our math block. And last, we're going to look at how do we, if we're teaching hands-on in the classroom, how do we keep our parents, how do we keep our kids connected to what we're doing in the classroom, to what we're doing at home? So these are going to be all the things that we're going to talk about this afternoon. So why hands-on learning? Well, one, we know that it reduces the students' cognitive load. So it really helps kids, provide them a way to reduce that cognitive load so that they can see the mathematics occurring. It really helps facilitate understanding. So it's about them constructing meaning of the concept through the representation, through being able to move that physically and then moving to that representational or pictorial and then to the abstract. And then lastly, it increases student motivation to learn and understand. It's really a great way to engage students in the mathematics when they are hands-on. So what we need to remember is, where do we start and where is our endpoint? So what we know is that we always want to start with something concrete. But what is very important about this is really this next phase. So I think we do a really good job of teaching concretely, but sometimes this middle step is what is forgotten about. And that's really about helping kids bridge from this concrete to more of a pictorial or representational aspect. So it's really important to not skip this step, because sometimes we end up going right here to the abstract. So we're like, oh, they did all this great stuff with these manipulatives, and then we just give them the problem with nothing. We really want to help kids scaffold from concrete to the abstract. And that's what our hands-on standards, teaching math with manipulatives, really does that piece for us. So what is this? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to look at this solution through the lens of a math block. So I know that some of you may not have 90 minutes right now. Some of you may only have 60 minutes. Some of you, if you have 45 minutes, you may only have 45 minutes. I always like, 60 or 90, but I know that that's not always possible. But I really want to see, how does this solution fit in the math block? And so what you can see is that you're probably right now starting your math with some type of routine or some type of warm-up. And so we could start our first 10 to 15 minutes with a daily problem-solving routine that incorporates the hands-on aspect, giving kids a choice to choose a manipulative to help with their representation. And then we can move into a whole group mini lesson, which is that 20 to 30-minute lesson that really gives kids a chance to kind of introduce that concept. And then after that, we might have time for intervention or some centers. And so what our intervention is going to be is looking at our hands-on standards math intervention and how that helps our students go a little bit deeper and wider into what they already have learned, maybe in their whole group mini lesson. Or it could be a way to extend learning for some students or help students fill some of those gaps that they might have. And then, of course, our last piece is the close and reflect. And with anything that we have in our hands-on standards, we have some type of formative assessment, which can be part of our close and reflect piece. And then lastly, you'll see something completely separate, which is that at-home learning. And so that's where our learning at home comes in. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through each one of these pieces. And so we're going to begin with the daily problem-solving routine. So when I was in the classroom, I was in the classroom for 17 years. And when I was in there, I feel like I had a lot of what I call problem performers. So those are students who really focused on an operation. I wonder how many of you have students who, when you ask them, okay, so what are you going to do? They're like, oh, I'm going to add everything they want to add. They just want to pull out an operation and do something with it, right? And so a lot of times adding seems to be the one that they choose the most. Or I even did this as a teacher where I had kids circling and underlining and boxing. But one of the things I noticed as I continued to do that year after year is that my kids were just doing it. It wasn't helping them pull out any information like I had intended it to do. What it was doing is just giving them another step to do. And so they were just circling, underlining, and boxing things without any understanding of the problem. Some of my students, how many of you have students who just read through the problem and they're like, okay, I've read it. Okay, let me do something. So they never take the time to sit there and really understand and think through the problem. Or how many of you are like, they have one way to solve it, that's the only way that they do it. They do the same thing every single time. So these students are what I call more like problem performers. They are really not taking the problem and understanding it before they ever do anything. Maybe they're looking for a key word that's going to help them, that they think is going to help them, but in turn doesn't necessarily. Or they're just looking and they're pulling out and they're going to do an operation. This is what I saw a lot in the classroom year after year, when really my goal was to create a problem solver. So I really wanted to create students in my classroom who, when they read, they really explored the problem and they understood it. They analyzed information, meaning they really searched in the problem for important information. They actually visualized or modeled what was being represented in the problem before they ever did anything. So before they ever decided whether they're going to add, subtract, multiply, or divide in a problem, they actually visualized or they modeled it, they represented it first, and then made the decision. Or they really looked at numbers first and decided, ooh, those numbers, I want to try this strategy. And you know what? If that strategy doesn't work and I get an answer that doesn't make sense, then I'm going to test it again and I'm going to try something different. This is what a problem solver is. This is what we're wanting our kids to become. So that is where one of our brand new products called Daily Hands-On Standards Teaching Math with Manipulatives, our daily problem solving, is really going to help our students become that dictionary definition of what a problem solver is, which is somebody who is a thinker, who focuses on the problem, tries to synthesize the information and knowledge to achieve a solution. That's what we're trying to create. And we feel at Hand to Mind that we have that solution for you, which is called daily problem solving. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at what daily problem solving is all about. So this is a daily routine. So in a week's time, we are going to go through 5 different types of problems that all are related to the same skill or concept. So we're going to have a video problem. That's how we're going to start off. We're going to have a problem that we're going to call a multi-solution problem, a numberless problem, a single solution problem, and then we're going to give kids opportunities to create a problem. Again, all throughout the same concept or skill. Don't worry, we're going to go through each one of these so that you can experience what it might be like in your classroom if you had daily problem solving, okay? So we're going to start with that video problem, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this video, and what I'm going to ask you when I'm done is ask you 2 questions, which is, what do you notice? And what do you wonder? So those are the 2 things that you're going to do. So go ahead, and hopefully my music's going to work, but you're going to watch and see, what do you notice? What do you wonder? Okay, so that's where we're going to stop there for a second. So my first question for y'all is, what do you notice? If you can take a moment and put something in the question answer box so that Kristen can look and see, and she's going to share out to us just some of the things that you're noticing. What are some things you're noticing?
I'm going to start throwing them out there. Plant A grew quicker. Plant B is shorter. How tall will plant B get?
Okay.
Wider. Okay. And there is a ruler.
Okay, nice. So I'm going to stop you there, Kristen. I heard a lot of great things. So someone's like, I saw that plant A grew, was quicker. I see that plant B is shorter. I noticed there's a ruler there. So those are some really good noticing. So if I was in the classroom right now and y'all could see me, I would write down all students' noticings, everything they're noticing. And then I would ask you, what do you wonder? And so somebody already gave a wondering, Kristen, and that was, how tall will plant B, or how tall is plant B, or how tall will plant B get? So that is a great wondering. Are there any other wonderings that might come about here? And when I ask wonderings, and especially in the classroom, sometimes we have to nudge them and say, we want a mathematical wondering. At first, I will take any wonderings they have. And I know in a classroom we can get a lot of things. But if I'm not getting where I want to be, then I might ask, can you think of a mathematical wondering? So Kristen, can you just tell me a few wonderings that might be in there?
Sure. I wonder why the other plant is not growing as fast. I wonder if they will flower or stay green. I wonder what the number will be for plant B. I wonder what type of units are shown on the ruler.
Oh, nice. Okay, I'm going to stop you there, Kristen. So again, if I was in the classroom, I would be writing down all these wonderings because y'all have some great wonderings and you probably want some answers to them. Now, I have a wondering already, and so I'm just going to share that wondering with you. And this was my wondering. I wanted to know how much taller plant A was than plant B. And so my question would be, though, before I can answer that, is what information do I need to give you to help you figure out how much taller plant A is than plant B? So think about that. You can put it in the chat, but what information do I need to figure out how much taller is plant A than plant B? So I wonder how many of you said, well, if I'm trying to figure that out, you've got to tell me how tall plant B is. And that was one somebody's wondering. So let's watch and see if we can find out. So now do I have enough information to go and solve this problem? How much taller is plant A than plant B? Yeah, I know how tall plant A is. It's 22 centimeters. I know plant B is 17 centimeters. So now I'm trying to figure out how much taller it is. So this is the point where I would send students back and have them solve the problem. Now you can solve the problem however you want, but I'm also going to give them some centimeter cubes for them to use if they choose. So some students will choose to use centimeter cubes and some will not. But I would give them that hands-on piece so that they could make a representation that will help them explain how they figured out the problem, okay? So take a moment and figure out how much taller plant A is than plant B. So just take a moment to do that. I wonder how many of you said that plant A was 5 centimeters taller. Yeah, I bet you a lot of you said that. Is that what they were saying, Kristen?
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. So what I would do once my students come back and we have, once they come back, is we're going to discuss all the different strategies that students might do to solve this problem. So a strategy might be that they do the 22 centimeter cubes and then they take the 17 away, and so that's going to leave them with 5. Or some of them may start with 22 and just count back until they get to 17 and they know that there's a difference of 5. Or some students might make a row of 22 and a row of 17 and see that there's a difference of 5. There's lots of different strategies that students could use to solve this problem. And it's going to be up to me as the teacher to bring out all these different ways, because remember, I'm trying to create a problem solver, someone who sees that there's more than one way to attack this problem. And the visual tool, the hands-on tool, just gives me a way to be able to talk and speak about that. So something that you saw just a while ago is we have provided on these cards all the questions I asked you. What did you notice? What do you wonder? What information do you need to solve the problem? Like, those were all the same questions that I asked you. Then we provide you with sample responses of what students might do. These are not an exhaustive list. Students will do a lot of different things, but this just gives you some idea, gives you some discussion questions that you could ask with the students. And then if you have students that might be struggling, we've provided some information for a lookout. But really, the idea behind the video problem is it engages students in the mathematics, reduces that literacy demand, and provides students opportunities to notice and wonder. So that's how we might start off our week when we do a daily problem solving. Then we might go into something that I call a multi-solution problem. And so I'm going to take a moment, I'm going to read this out loud to you, and I'm going to ask some questions for you, and then I'm going to have you solve it, okay? So it is just Laura and Janet build a tower together. The total length of the tower is less than 14 inches. If Laura's section is 9 inches long, how long could Janet's section of the tower be? So I always start off with the question, who or what is the problem about? Just like what we do when we find main idea in reading, I want to connect that to math. That's what we're doing. We're finding the main idea. So I want to start with who or what is this problem about? And so you may be saying, well, it's about Laura and it's about Janet and it's about them building this tower. Yeah. And what do we want to know about Laura, Janet, and building this tower? What is it that we're trying to figure out? Well, we're trying to figure out how long could Janet's section be of the tower? So what information from the problem do we need? So some of you may say, well, you need to know that Laura's section is 9 inches long And you need to know that the total length of the tower is less than 14 inches. So the question is, how long could Janet's section of the tower be? So we have all the information. So take a moment and figure out how long could Janet's section of the tower be? So take a moment to do that. Kristen, are you seeing some answers in there?
Yes, I see between 1 and 4 inches. Repeated several times. I see 1.
I like that. So that's so I'm going to stop you there, Kristen, because that's what I wanted to say. So if you're doing this with kids, how many of your kids are going to say 1 to 4? Or how many of your kids are going to find one answer? And so somebody's like, I think it's 1. And some other kid's going to say, no, I think it's 3. And some other kid's going to say, no, I think it's 2. Now what we've done is we've really helped kids start to have a discussion to prove why they feel like their answer is reasonable, why they think their solution to the problem makes sense. And so it's going to come back to that language in the problem, that we didn't tell them the exact length of it. That's what creates that multi-solution. When we do a multi-solution, this helps us get out of the realm that there's only one way or there's only one answer to a problem. Because we know that there can be sometimes multiple solutions or multiple answers to problems, depending on what they are. So that is what this problem is doing. So again, looking at the card, you see those same questions I asked you. And then on the back, I provided 3 sample solutions for you. So 3 different answers. So one was 4, one's 3, one's 1. But giving you those discussion questions to help your students see, compare, and connect strategies. Also, why are there more than one answer to it? But the things that the multi-solution problem does is it engages students in true problem solving, which means I can't just pull out numbers and do something with them because of giving it that stipulation of not giving them the exact total. It helps kids develop those critical thinking skills, and it makes sure that they have to make sense of the problem. So that is a multi-solution problem, still over the same idea, comparing links, right? We're still doing the same thing. Now, the next day might be what's called a numberless problem. And some of you may know, have seen numberless problems, and some of you, this may be the first time. But there is a thought leader out there named Brian Bouchard, who he's kind of the forefront, but he has a great blog on numberless problems. And so this is a great idea to help students really make them think first before doing anything with those numbers, right? So let's look at this one. I'm going to read it to you and I'm going to ask you some questions. Jacques measured a model of a boat and it was some centimeters long. He measured a second model of a boat and it was some centimeters longer than the first. So I would ask them, what do you notice? What do you notice? And some of you may say, well, I know that there's 2 boats. I know that one boat is some centimeters long, but I know that there's another boat and it's longer than the first boat. So as students are telling me this, I might be drawing a picture just to help them organize this information. Now, if I told them to do anything, no. So my next question is, my next thing would be is to put some numbers in there. We can't even quantify this yet. So now I reread the problem. Jacques measured a model of a boat and it was 4 centimeters long. He measured a second model of a boat and it was 5 centimeters longer than the first. So I would ask my students, what changed? And they can say, well, now I know how long the boats are. Yeah, I know the first boat is 4 centimeters long and I know the second boat is 5 centimeters long. So I can put some numbers to it. Still, do I know do I have a question to answer? Nope. So I'm going to ask the kids. I want the kids to tell me, what question could we ask about this situation? They can come up with lots of different questions. We've, of course, identified one, but I'm going to write down their questions because I can use this problem a lot in my classroom. So the question that we're going to do is, what is the total length of the second boat model? So then this is where I would give them some centimeter cubes again and tell them, they can choose to use it or they can choose not. They can draw pictures, whatever they're comfortable with, and go off and solve the problem. And so then we would come back and we would have that discussion. So just take a look again. You can see those same questions I asked you. We already give you those in some sample pieces. And then we provide you with different ways that students might do this and give you some discussion questions. And again, a lookout for students that might be struggling. But what does the numberless problem do for your students to really create them being that problem solver? Well, first off, it focuses attention on understanding before solving. Isn't that what we said we wanted a problem solver to do? It provides opportunities for rich discussions in your classroom. We can talk about what questions could we ask, and we can really compare ideas. And it really helps students notice relationships in problems. So really helping them think about the problem and how two things maybe relate with each other without those numbers first. Then putting those numbers in and helping them be able to solve it. So the next day, again, that was still on comparing links. So the next day, we may give something that I call a single solution problem. So when I read this problem to you, you're probably going to go, I know exactly what kind of problem that is. Those are the type of problems I see all the time. Exactly. So it goes like this. Olivia builds a model of a train that's 17 inches long. Serena's train model is 12 inches long. How much longer is Olivia's model? What I'm doing is now I'm giving kids all the information in one problem. So every day I've given them something to help them start to focus, become that problem solver. Now on this day, I'm giving them all those pieces, and I'm really wanting to see now, are kids going to use what they've learned from the video problem, from the multi-solution problem, from the numberless problem? Are they going to use and stop and really understand and think through their problem first before just pulling those answers and pulling those numbers and doing something with them? So if I was doing this in the classroom, I'd ask those same questions. Who or what is the problem about? What are you looking for? What information would you do? I would let them go off and solve the problem again. So just like what we had done. So there they are. There's those questions I just talked about. This time it would be color tiles because we're talking about inches. So when we're choosing manipulatives, we're choosing manipulatives for a purpose. So I use centimeter cubes when we are doing centimeters. I'm choosing color tiles when we're doing inches. So everything has a purpose. I, again, bring the students back. These are just some ways that students might do it. Again, this is not exhaustive. These are just some pieces. Then we're going to discuss the strategies, and then we're going to also have those lookouts for those students who might be struggling again. So what does a single solution problem do for your students? Well, it provides context that are understandable for students. It helps them practice understanding problems that have all the information provided. We've got to practice it with everything because that's typically how they're going to see their problems, right? But again, it focuses on relationships between the knowns and the unknowns in the same way it did with the numberless problems, because they're learning about how to pull out the information. And then on the last day, I'm going to give kids opportunities to create problems. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to give them a visual, and I'm going to ask them some questions. So I might post this visual up, and I might say, so who or what will your problem be about? And some of you may be looking at that going, well, it's going to be about pencils. Okay. And what are you going to need to tell them about these pencils? Well, some of you may be looking at that and go, those are color tiles. So I'm going to tell them that red pencil is 8 inches long and that green pencil is 6 inches long. And then the next question I might ask is, well, what question might you ask? So they're coming up. I'm going to help them and scaffold them to creating this problem, but I'm giving them a visual to help them with that. And then what the kids will do is they will create their own problem. And then you have the choice. Do you have them share out? Do you have them get with a partner and they work each other's problems? But the thing with a creating problem is it really helps connect math concepts to students' own lived experiences, because they start bringing in their own experiences in when they're creating problems. It really encourages students to look closely at the features of problems. So in order to write a problem, they have to understand the features of the problem. And then it also gives them deep ownership of it when they create something. But recognize that all of these pieces all were around the same idea. So if you are someone who says, oh, I like to have the problems out there for the kids to write on and do all that, we have that in our student lesson pages. But this is daily problem solving. What you get is, there's one for grade K, there's one for grade 1, and there's one for grade 2. What you get is 180 teaching problem solving cards with instructional support. You have enough problems for 180 days. You get 36 video problems, because remember, there's one video problem per week and there's 36 weeks. You get 144 digital formatted problems. So how I had those problems where you could see, like in the numberless problems, where it was numberless first and then it was the numbers, and then we provide you with that as well. So those are, you don't have to write the problem up on the board. It's already prepared for you so that you can display it in digital format. And then we have the 36 problem solving student activity pages that the kids, for a week long of problems. So that is daily problem solving. So that is a routine that you can start your lessons with that really still gives them that hands-on learning. But the main thing is you're creating problem solvers in your classroom. So next, what we're going to look at is, okay, so we've done the daily routine. So let's look at, what does it look like, hands-on learning look like in a mini lesson? So mini lessons are usually 20 to 30 minutes long. And so with this, what we might start off with is some EL support. So what we know is that some students need some support with the vocabulary that they might do. So I might start off with the word compare, because this mini lesson is actually going to connect right back to that daily problem solving that we were talking about. So we might talk about this word compare, and the way I might do that is giving them some visual representation. So I might show these color tiles and ask them to compare to each other or compare the numbers. Or I might say, you know, when we compare, sometimes we compare numbers. That's an experience you might already have, where we say 4 is greater than 2 or 2 is less than 4. Or I might give you 2 visuals and we might be talking about the lengths of those objects. So when I look at this, I might ask you which one is longer. And you would say, well, I can see that line A is longer than line B. When we are looking at 2 things and we are putting them up and we're seeing the relationships with them, what we're doing is we are comparing. So that's going to prepare them for how we start off our math mini lesson. So our math mini lessons actually start off with a problem again, because what we know is that in math, we want to set it in some type of context. So it may not be daily problem solving, but it's still going to be set in a problem context so that kids can always make connections back to it. So here's the problem. Darlene knows that her markers are longer than her crayons, but she wants to know how much longer. How can she find out? So what I'm going to do And I would ask the students first to kind of give me some of those. Well, how could you find out? Give me some explanations. And then I'm going to take them through a step-by-step guided lesson. And so here's what it might look like. First thing I'm going to do is get that marker out and maybe use my inchworms. So inchworms are a great tool to help students when they are measuring and comparing. So we would get our marker out, we would find out how long our marker is. And then the next step is we get that crayon out. And we're going to see how long is the crayon. And then lastly, we're going to talk about that comparison. So this is where I can connect it to a number sentence if I need to or not, but really having that discussion of how much longer is that marker than that crayon. And so now I can see and have that discussion that it's 2 inches longer. So we would come back together again, look at that question again and ask students how they solved it. And then we might extend it more and not just to tell us like how much longer it is, but they could also draw a representation to help explain their answers. They might write a sentence, the marker is blank inches longer than the crayon. So there's lots of things we would do in a solve it piece as we come back. And then we would end our lesson with some type of formative assessment, which might be, I might just give every student some lines and ask them to measure the lines in inches and tell me how much longer is line A than line B. So that's going to be kind of like their exit ticket out. And so this would be that mini lesson to help kids understand how to measure and compare. And then after that, we have a student page where we can assess them. So giving them some more pieces to go back and work on. And I can now get an assessment on that. But let's look closely at just a lesson in general. So that's kind of the lesson really quick, a mini lesson in the different pieces. But let's really look at the components. So this is what the inside of our hands-on standards mini lesson book looks like. What you will notice is there's a section called Talk About It. This gives you more discussion questions that goes along with the Try It. You have your Solve It piece, just like we did, where we come back. And so you can see that when I come back here, it's not just the actual answer to the Try It, but it extends and pushes students just a little bit further. There's a more ideas section here. So if that Try It lesson is not enough for your students, we've provided you more ideas of what you can do. But here's that Try It. So you can see that the problem that this isn't the one that I use, but you can see right there, there's the problem. You can see that there's the photo illustrated steps. And then there's a lookout, just like what we had in the daily problem solving, as well as a formative assessment piece. So, and then our EO support. All of the lessons have the EO support. So these are the components of the lesson. There's one more component, which is the student practice. You always know where the student practice is because in the more ideas section, it tells you right here where you would find that. And so it would go right there. And we do have the Spanish. We are going to have the Spanish student pages online as well. So this is math mini lessons, which is for our pre-K. We have a pre-K book and through grade 2. So each grade level has its own book, but there are 42 standards aligned lesson plans, 42 student-facing activity pages, and 42 digital Try It problems. So that Try It problem about the markers and the crayons, we have that digitally. So yes, it's in the book, but now what we know is that teachers want to be able to display it and not have to write it. So we're going to provide those for you digitally, as well as every lesson has some type of formative assessment question or lesson, and then the English language support for each one of those lessons. So that's that math mini lessons. So we're going along through our math block, and we're going to move to what is intervention. So what does intervention look like? So again, we're going to stick with the theme of comparing links, because what I want you to see is that hands-on standards teaching math and manipulatives really is a full solution for what you are teaching. So when I look at this math intervention, how is this different? Well, one thing we know is that math intervention needs to be systematic and explicit instruction. So we're going to see how hands-on standards is math intervention is that. The other thing is that we know that we need to use visual representations. That's very important. And then we also need to monitor their progress. So we've included all of these pieces in our math intervention. But one thing you're going to notice when you look at the math intervention is that you're going to go, well, that looks just like the mini lessons. Yes, that is very purposeful. One of the things we heard a lot is people like this format. They like the step-by-step photo illustrated pieces. It helps us as teachers know exactly what to do with our students. So it still has the same format as the other, which includes a student page as well. So you have a way to, after each lesson, there is a student page that will assess. But the math intervention comes with assessments as well. So there is an assessment after each section. So in this book, Math Intervention, Geometry, Measurement, and Data, there's an assessment over geometry, an assessment for measurement, and an assessment for data. So this is just a piece of the assessment. It's more than one page, but that's just what an assessment might look like for this. And then remember, we have that progress monitoring tool. So we've provided a tool to help you know what concept is each question teaching, what lesson did it come back from, and did my students meet or did they not for each one of those questions, so that I can go back and reassess. And so it's brought to my attention that, you know, we could use this assessment as something at the beginning of the year, and then you could use it again at the middle of the year, and you could also use it again at the end of the year. So that is a way to use this. Or some of you may use an intervention tool differently, but this is an example of what our progress monitoring tool looks like. So math intervention, it includes for K2, it's K1 and 2, each has their own book. There's a number and operations book for kinder, first and second. There is a geometry, measurement, and data book for kinder, first and second. But what's in that are 20 standards aligned lessons. So thinking back, it was still over measurement and compare, but it was taught in a different way or used a different manipulative and asked different questions. It still comes with those student activity pages. Every single lesson has formative assessment. You still have that English language support, but the difference is that you get 3 to 4 unit assessments, depending on which book you have, and one progress monitoring tool that helps you keep track of your students' progress throughout. So that is math intervention. But we don't want to forget our students when they go home. So what we have is what we call our learning at home. So this is still part of our hands-on standards because it's teaching math with manipulatives. So what is learning at home? Well, learning at home is a book like right there that comes with all the manipulatives that students can actually physically take home and use. They're theirs to use, they're individualized. But they come with fun activities. They include the manipulatives, they have Spanish support, and they have an easy to follow planning calendar. So in every book, there is a 6-week calendar. So you could use this as a 6-week or you don't have to. But what it does is it shows you how we're going to start, as we're going to model, we're going to explain, we're going to work with words, we're going to talk about it, and we're going to have fun. And that's kind of how our activities are organized here. You'll also notice that each one of those has a reflection question for every day. So if the parents want to ask their kids a question about the activity, there's a reflection question that goes along with it. So this is what it looks like the inside. So you can see that there's some activities that actually use the manipulatives that are included. There is Spanish support with each one of them. So the instructions are in there. The letter to the family is also in Spanish. And so we've provided some different types of support for that. What we want you to know, what we've done is we've really created something that all works together. So if you have the daily problem solving cards, those are very much connected to the math mini lessons, which are very much connected to the intervention piece. Because what we've done is we've looked at how we can make everything still that hands-on teaching math with manipulatives, but really fit into your math block. And so these are all of the new components that we have for our hands-on standards. Don't leave, because I know we have a drawing, but I did want to tell you thank you very much for joining. And Kristen, I'm going to let you I don't know if there's any questions you want me to answer. I can answer those. Okay.
Yeah, we do just have a couple. So before I go there, Christy Rickard, yay, you get to choose one grade, K1 or 2 of the mini lessons, and we're going to go ahead and send those to you when they are available. So congrats. It's always fun to win. Yay, you. I do have a couple questions, Brittany, before we wrap it up here. So can you talk about pre-K problem solving? Is there a pre-K problem solving resource?
We did not create a pre-K problem solving with the daily problem solving yet. So it's not necessarily in the works either, but we always like to take people's feedback. And if it's something that people are thinking that they're interested in, we will listen but I will tell you that in the mini lessons book, remember the try-its, they all start with some type of problem, even in the pre-K book. So there is that problem solving aspect in that book as well.
Okay, great. I did have another one. I'm just trying to, okay, here we go. Would you, let's see. Okay, hands-on standards fractions and hands-on standards numbers and operations that we currently have in our district. Will the new hands-on standards be aligned to the TEKS?
To the TEKS?
And you answered this for me the other day when we were talking about standards. I would say, the same thing, if you want to share that.
So what we've done is we've really looked at standards as a whole. What we know is that, there is a whole across the United States, everyone has some different things. What we've done is we've tried to be as common as possible to make the connection with each state. So we have tried to make sure that we are hitting each state's common standards, but we do go through all of the different strands and have a variety of those pieces for each one. If they will all be aligned, so we will have alignment documents to each state. We can provide that through one of our resources. So if that is something a district would need, we can definitely do something like that and help you.
Great. I have 2 more. What do you suggest for a time frame for pre-K kids who have trouble sitting still?
So I would say our pre-K, that's a great question. Our pre-K lessons are a little bit shorter than that, than necessarily as a second grade lesson. So we have thought about those pieces, but I will tell you that I would do this in more of a small group setting. So if you're doing a hands-on standards mini lesson with pre-Kers, it might be in a small group so that you have their attention right there. And it's those three to 4 steps that you're working with them and talking through that. So you also could split up the activity up into different time sections. So just the amount of attention span that they might have would be my suggestion. But I would definitely think maybe small group would probably be the best way to keep that student's attention. Okay.
And then one more, what suggestions do you have for students at home who may not have centimeter cubes?
Let me think. What at home?
That's a tough one.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what we have at home that's about a centimeter. That one is a tough one. That one kind of puts me on the spot right now, and I'm not thinking fully. If somebody who's out there and already knows something that they can think of right now, please put it in the chat. But I can think about that. You are more than welcome to email me as well. My email is not here, but I am on Twitter. But I'm bgarrig@handtomind.com. So Kristen, if you want to put that in there, they're more than welcome to email me that question, and I just need a little bit more time to think on that.
Sure, absolutely. I will put the email in there, Scott, for you, and then if you can shoot that over to Brittany. We usually have a lot of suggestions for manipulatives, like, Lego, or, there's lots of things at home that you can use. The centimeter cubes is a tough one.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of which one is a centimeter, like something at home that's a centimeter, about a centimeter, but I'm not thinking off the top of my head right now, but I can definitely think about that.
Sounds good. I think that is it. Those were good questions, guys. Brittany, that was a great webinar. Thank you so much for walking everybody through. How about a Cheerio? That's a good idea.
Yes, a Cheerio is probably, that's probably pretty good as a centimeter.
Or dry bean.
Yes, I was going to say, I would also recognize that if you're working with centimeters in second grade, I would be okay with, just calling it a unit as well instead of centimeters. So sometimes we can just we can take out the word centimeter and use unit instead, so that you're not being exact if you don't have a centimeter, but just something that's smaller than an inch.
So I love the suggestion of a straw cut into centimeter pieces, because you could just use a ruler. So Carolyn, that's a good suggestion. Also, mini marshmallows. You just have to, be sure that the kids are not eating them, which would be challenging. So they're less likely to eat a straw. All suggestions. Thank you, guys. So Brittany, thank you again, everybody. I hope you have a great afternoon. This does wrap up our fall webinar series. We will start in the spring with a new series of webinars. So we hope you will join us then, and start looking for hands-on standards. It will be available in January, and we hope that you come back and join us again. Thanks, Brittany.
Yes, thank y'all very much.
Have a good one, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.